Welcome to Crime Most French, a fortnightly podcast covering intriguing cases carried out on French soil. Researched and narrated by Cedric and rudely interrupted by me, Melanie. We're the true crime podcast on the lines. Crack open le vin and let the mayhem commence.
This is episode 100, Jacques Mesrine.
We've hit the ton.
Yes.
The ton in numbers and the ton in terms of French crime. He's the big daddy.
Yeah. Mesrine has been in the media a lot. There has been a two-part film in 2008-2009 about him. Who was he and what actually happened to him? I kept the Mesrine story until now because it's a huge story. We could easily make a 3-parter on him.
Mm.
I remember Mesrine, and it should be pronounced Mesrine, but the media has always referred to him as Mesrine, so that's the name I've always heard, so that's the name I'm going to use.
I think when they were promoting the film, I'm reasonably sure they said Mesrine all the time.
Yeah, because everybody has always called him Mesrine, but technically that's grammatically wrong. It should be Mesrine. And he really hated when people called him Mesrine. It's Mesrine.
Mm.
Anyway, and I'll use Mesrine because otherwise I'll get confused. So I remember from the news when I was a kid, I was only 5 at the time, but I remember his photo in the newspapers and hearing about him in the news. I only learned the whole story when the film came out.
Public Enemy #1.
Yes, and the second one I can't remember. No, Public Enemy #1 is the second film.
Public Enemy #1 was the second film.
The first one was...
I can't remember.
I can't remember.
We did see it in 2008. That was a wee while
We saw it
ago.
in the cinema, I think.
Yeah, we did, yes.
So that's a long time. Anyway, what I remember the most about him is what happened on the 2nd of November 1979 at about 3:15 p.m. On that day, Mesrine was driving his flashy brown BMW 528i, which was nearly new, with his girlfriend, Sylvia Jean-Jacques, Porte de Clignancourt. So that's on the inner ring of the Paris periphery. A large lorry with a tarp gets in front of him because he let him through. And the traffic is quite heavy at the time. Suddenly the tarp opens and a bunch of men open fire on Mesrine's car. Over 20 bullets are fired in the car. Mesrine doesn't have time to react and he's killed instantly. What I remember after this is the uncertainty of who had killed him and how, because then the lorry disappeared and nobody knew at the time who it was.
Yeah.
That was really confusing, and for a 5-year-old it was weird that people would get killed in the streets. We don't live in Chicago or Detroit. It's not something that happens.
No, I mean, it felt very much like the Sonny assassination in the first Godfather film. The car was kind of like riddled with
I see. I haven't seen
bullets. I know you haven't seen
No.
it. It's James Caan's character.
I see.
Completely obliterated. A lot more than 20 bullets, but it was of that magnitude.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen in France. So
No.
that was weird for a 5-year-old. So at that point, Mesrine had been searched by the authority for years, always evading capture, even though he was talking to journalists and publishing books, like, for example, his autobiography called Instinct of Death, and I think that might be the name of the first film.
Well, that sounds
Killer
familiar.
Instinct.
Killer Instinct, is it?
They translated that Killer Instinct, but it's not what the title is. The title is Instinct of Death, not Instinct of Killing. So anyway. So yes.
It's Jacques Mesrine, isn't it?
Jacques Mesrine, yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was weird that guy was on TV and talking to a journalist and giving interviews and the cops couldn't find him. And that was very strange.
Yeah, he was like some kind of celebrity.
Oh, he totally was. Yeah,
It's just insane.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, like seeing somebody like El Chapo on late night TV or something. It's just
very similar, yes.
It's just kind of weird.
Yes. Yeah. So it all started in France in the 60s. At the time, Mesrine is about 23, and he's a small-time gangster. He burgles and attacks small businesses, usually still smallish amounts of money. He's known from the authorities who arrest him for the first time in 1962, as he's just preparing to attack a bank with 3 accomplices. He's tried and sentenced to 18 months in prison in March 62. He's freed in 63, And at that point, he decides to go straight because, as far as he's concerned, he's been a gangster since the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Although the police didn't know about it at the time because he was really just doing burglaries and
Just
stupid
low
things.
level,
So
yeah.
nobody really cared that much.
No, there's the stuff that we generally don't talk about because it's really not that big a deal.
Yes. So at that point, he decides to go straight. And he takes a job in a small internal decoration business.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he loses his job when the company goes under.
Oh dear.
And at that point, he decides that his career is to be a gangster. So
if it hadn't been for the French economy, he probably would have been straight and we would never have known about him.
Pretty much, yes. So he shortly manages a hotel that he was given by one of his aunts. And he, at the time, meets his girlfriend, who is an ex-prostitute. She finds a way to exploit the 5 rooms of the hotel very efficiently. You can guess how.
Okay.
But as the local underworld uses the hotel, there's regular fights in the hotel. Then there's dodgy payments. There's some dealings that shouldn't happen, and the authorities start getting interested in it.
Okay, so basically it turns into a bordello.
Yes.
Yeah.
He eventually gets caught for unpaid debts, and he's sentenced to 2 years in prison.
Wow.
At that point. The hotel is closed down, and it's bought and reopened in 1978, many years later.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, Mesrine is tired of his mediocre life in France, so he decides to go to sunny Spain. That's 1965.
Right.
First, he lives in Palma de Mallorca,
Okay.
where he gets caught stealing documents from the office of the military governor.
Jesus.
Spain suspects that he's working for the French secret services, but there's never been any proof of that.
Right.
And it would be surprising.
Yeah, it'd be kind of a left of...
Yes. That would be a strange thing, but nobody knows why he would have decided to steal those documents, because really that has nothing to do with him. He's a gangster.
Yeah, I mean, what's he going to be able to do with them?
Nobody knows. And that's why probably the Spanish government decided it has to be secret services, because otherwise who would be interested in military documents? Not a gangster.
No.
So nobody knows. But he was caught anyway.
Yeah, Spain must have been still quite kind of like trying to find its feet at that point.
Right, it was still Franco. Franco died in 75.
Oh, right, okay. So, yes, this
there was still 10 more years of Franco at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was opening a bit, mostly because of tourism.
Yes.
But it was still Franco. He then moves to the Canaries, where he opens a restaurant. Mm. But in his free time, he continues to burgle and rob shops around Europe. He gets recognized several times because at that point his photo's been in newspapers and stuff.
It almost sounds like a hobby at that point.
Yeah, it actually is a hobby, yes. And things become a little bit hairy. Mm-hmm. His wife, who's called Maria Soledad Ortiz, he had met her in Spain,
right,
decides to leave him. And his 3 children, born in 61, 62, and 65, I think, are taken care of by his parents.
Okay.
So they divorce.
Right.
At that point. On the 6th of February 68, he escapes arrest in France and decides to let things cool down a little bit by immigrating to Quebec. Oh,
that bit I remember.
From the films, yes.
Yes, I remember him finding the Quebecois accent particularly.
Yeah, because it is. France and Quebec have a special relationship. For example, Quebec, which is not a sovereign state, has one embassy in the world. It's in Paris. Which makes no sense because Quebec is not a country, it's a province, but they have an embassy in France.
I didn't know that. So Canada has a separate embassy?
Yes, there's a Canadian embassy in Paris and there's a Quebec embassy in Paris as well. So it's very easy for him to immigrate to Quebec. There's no problem. It's still very easy for French citizens to
I was waiting to say,
Quebec.
I mean, you would be welcome with open arms.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, that would be very easy. He's followed by Jeanne Schneider, or Schneider, and I guess it was pronounced Schneider at the time. His new girlfriend, who he met after his divorce from Maria. She's also a cold girl. And she maintains that Mesrine killed her pimps. There is no proof of that, though.
Right.
The authorities say that there's no unsolved murder at the time that would match her story. So, don't know if that's true or not.
Right.
There's a theme along the whole story, which is that there's usually a big gap between reality and what Mesrine says is reality.
He is a bit Walter Mitty, isn't he?
He mixing things up quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's hard to know when you talk to him what is true and what's not. So you always have to take it with a grain of salt because it's not clear. So those pimps, according to Jan, he killed. According to the police, they have no clue who that could have been because there's no unsolved murder. So they don't know.
Right.
In Quebec, they live in Montreal, Rue Sherbrooke-Est, for those who know, and then they moved to Mont-Saint-Hilaire. I think it's a fairly posh area. Trying to lay low, they start work for a local millionaire called Georges Deslauriers, who made his money in fruit and veg. He works as a cook and driver, and she works as a maid.
Oh, right,
for
okay.
him. That lasts
cliche.
about 5 months.
He lasts a whole 5 months?
A whole 5 months.
Okay.
That's until there is a disagreement with one of the gardeners, which leads both of them being fired.
Okay.
I can't remember that's in the film. I need to watch it again. Wanting revenge, they kidnap the millionaire on the 12th of January 1969 with the help of a French accomplice they met in Montreal.
Right.
They demand $200,000 ransom to his brother.
Right.
George manages to escape, even though he was mostly wheelchair-bound. He was disabled. I have no idea how he escaped. I didn't find details of that, but he escaped.
Right, that's amazing.
Yep. And at that point, of course, Mesrine gets $0, and he's now a big criminal searched by the RCMP, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
So he went up in the world.
Yeah, I mean, he's kidnapping millionaires is certainly a step up from kind of like
small burglaries.
Petty theft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in June 1969, to avoid the Canadian police, they illegally crossed the border into the US.
Okay.
The Canadian police, after they leave, discover the body of Evelyn de Boutillier, who was the owner of the last motel where Mesrine and Sylvia had stayed last. Did I say Sylvia? No, Jeanne.
Jeanne, yeah.
Jeanne stayed last. Sylvia comes later. She has been strangled. They assume it's Mesrine, but they don't know for sure. He's arrested at Texarkana in Arkansas, I think.
He made it all the way down to Texarkana?
He made it all the way down, but he's arrested there and extradited to Canada.
Yeah. I think that's just over the border, Texarkana, between
Texas and Arkansas. Could be, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think
Given the name, you would think so.
Yes. Yes.
Mesrine is not taking things very seriously.
That's kind of crazy. You've kidnapped and now you're going to be done for murder as well.
Yeah, no, he's not taking it seriously. So when the plane lands and he comes out of the plane, there's journalists and a crowd, of course, because they've heard of the story.
Yeah.
And he shouts, "Vive le Québec libre."
Oh, God.
Which is what de Gaulle said a few years earlier. That would have been not many years earlier, actually. Possibly a couple of years earlier.
I thought that was early 60s he said that.
Yeah, but that's 68, so it's not that long later. I think it might have been 65, Vive le Québec libre, something like that.
Yeah.
Because he was president until 69.
Right.
So it would have been definitively before 69, but I don't remember exactly when. So anyway, that was in a speech that was kind of badly received in Canada, you can imagine.
Well, yeah.
He's accused by the Canadian government of murder and kidnapping, and he becomes public enemy number one, officially in the Canadian press. Of course, he loves it. Of course. Because who doesn't like to be in the newspapers?
Yeah, he definitely has airs of kind of like Ronnie Biggs, who was part of the Great Train Robbery.
Oh, yes.
And he made it to Brazil. And he basically lapped up all of the attention he got. But I think he eventually, he came back when he was terminally ill to the UK. And I don't know if he was, I don't think he was.
Well, there would have been prescription at that point. Because if it's only robbery, the prescription is not long. It's like 10 or 15 years.
I don't know if somebody died, though. I can't remember.
Well, it depends if he's supposed to have killed that person.
Honestly, I don't know if I'm making that bit up, actually. But I think he did. He eventually came back. But I mean, he did. I mean, he loved it out in Brazil. And he was a celebrity.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's the same thing.
Mesrine's definitely got shades of him. So
there's another theme in his story, is that he escapes from prison quite a lot.
Oh, yes.
So he escapes from the local jail on the 17th of August 1969 with an accomplice.
Yeah.
He frees the girlfriend, but they are caught again the next day. Still in August 1969, Mesrine is sentenced to 10 years in prison for kidnapping of Georges Deslauriers, and his girlfriend is sentenced to 5 years.
But what about the murder?
He is found innocent of the murders, even though there's quite a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Right.
But the judge decided that wasn't enough to convict him, so he's not found guilty. And he always claimed that he was innocent, that he never killed her. He uses that story as the basis for his second book, which is called Guilty of Being Innocent, and was published in 1979.
Guilty of being a bullshitter, that's what he's guilty of being.
The films make a big thing about the conditions in which he was held in prison. They even link his stay to a change in the Canadian prison system, because he somehow highlighted how the conditions were horrible.
Right.
I have no idea if that's really true or not, but the film made a big thing out of it.
Okay.
The fact is that he was very good at controlling people. For example, he convinced the prison guards to rebel against the prison system for him.
He is just basically... He's now totally reminding me of Pablo Escobar. Totally like that. Has the whole system underneath his thumb.
Yeah, but he did it with money.
Yes.
Whereas Mesrine had no money. He did it by convincing people.
He was very charismatic.
Yes. He actually convinced the guards in the prison to support him, essentially. That made no sense. So yeah, it's a different way of doing it, but yeah, he's very good at controlling people. In any case, he escapes from the prison as well, because why not, in Saint-Vincent-de-Paul, on the 21st of August 1972, with 5 other prisoners, including one called Jean-Paul Mercier. We'll see him many times in the story. He also escaped with him from the local jail before. So that's twice they escaped together.
I don't think I'd be so quick to break out of a prison in Canada, because there's quite a lot of things that can kill you, like bears and...
Yeah, but that doesn't stop him. He just wants out. And it wasn't easy to get out, because the prison was surrounded by 2 walls covered in barbed wires. Then there was a tall 4-meter wall. There were 24 hours a day armed sentinels up miradors watching the prison. The cells had lights on 24 hours a day, and I think that was one of the grievances about the prison. There was just no dark in the prison. Lights were on all the time, 24 hours a day. And the ceiling of the cells were just a mesh wire on which the guards
could look
did
down
their
on
rounds.
You. Yeah.
And also he complained about the noise that it made, as far as I remember. And also that prison had 65 guards for 62 prisoners.
Wow, that's a
so
good ratio.
He managed to escape from that.
That is very impressive.
That is impressive. He did it by noticing that the surveillance was slightly lighter at the weekend, because of course people want to be off at the weekend. And somehow he managed to get his hands on files and a painter's ladder. And with that, he managed to escape.
Okay.
Once they escape, what's the next thing they do? They attack a bank, because why not?
Well, if you're out, why not beat your sentence even longer?
Yeah, at that point, has nothing to lose, I guess, but it couldn't help himself anyway. So they steal about $26,000, which I imagine is Canadian dollars. They again rob another bank 10 minutes later. 1 week later, they rob a third bank. Wow. Which they rob a second time 3 days after that.
That is ballsy.
And that's the thing that he does very often.
Yeah.
He robs a bank and robs it again, either the next day or within 2 or 3 days.
Okay, so they're resting on their laurels because they think, well...
Yeah, who's going to attack us a second time? Mesrine. Yes. That's who. So that's something he does in many banks. On the 3rd of September, Mesrine and Mercier try to free 3 prisoners from the prison. It fails. And in the process, they injure gravely 2 cops in the shootout.
Oh dear.
And a week later, they kill 2 forest guards who had been attracted to gunshot noise in the forest because they were practicing in the forest. And the guards became a problem, so they shot them.
Now we've definitely stepped over that line of...
Yes, now they kill people for no reason, yeah. In October, they rob a few banks in Montreal. And
there can't be any more banks left in Montreal.
Oh, there's plenty of banks in Montreal. Especially when you rob them several times. Then they escape to New York. They stay at the Waldorf Astoria.
Great film, Escape to New York. Love it.
Then he disappears to Venezuela with Mercier and their girlfriends. and they stay there a couple of months. Mercier and his girlfriend leave Venezuela because she's been bitten by a dog, and they want her to be looked after in Quebec.
Right, okay.
So they go back.
Are they worried about rabies, I guess?
I'm guessing so, yeah. And Mercier is killed 2 years later from a bullet in the head fired by police during a burglary. But that's 2 years later.
I mean, I'm just shattered. I think I would rather stay in prison and just kick back and enjoy myself. I mean, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. So at that point, Mesrine goes back to France illegally in December 72.
I'm quite surprised he managed to get in the country so easily.
Yeah, I don't know how he did it. I have no idea. Because there
I
would have
guess
been an arrest
he probably
warrants
knows
and stuff.
people that know a way.
Probably.
It's not like either of us would know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get hold of a fake passport, for
Yes.
example.
Yeah. And the first thing he does, of course, is a robbery.
Mm-hmm.
He attacks a small company to steal the payroll money.
I mean, the thing is, he'll have come into the country just
With that money, I guess.
With, I guess, Venezuelan money. So
Yeah. So then he robs a bank, and he's back in business.
it's like he never left.
He actually never left. On the 5th of March 73, he decides to punish the owner of a bar in Paris that he suspects is a snitch. He goes to the bar, but the owner isn't there. So to vent, he takes out his Colt 45 and shoots at the bar and in the bottles.
Right. Does he think he's in a wild,
Yes, exactly.
old Wild West
Yeah.
film?
Yeah. As he does so, a cop happens to walk past,
Uh-oh.
and he tries to intervene. He gets shot by Mesrine, and Mesrine disappears. So at that point, the police is aware that he's back in France.
Yeah.
They suspect that he was the murderer of a local pimp as well, who has been found dead in the forest by a dog walker who knew his job,
Yeah.
with 4 .45 caliber bullets in the head. The 45 caliber gun is the same as the one that fired in the bar.
Yeah,
So they
right,
think
okay.
that's him. So he killed that guy for some reason.
It's a Colt 45 a revolver, isn't it?
I have no idea.
So they wouldn't have had the casing. So
They wouldn't have the casing maybe, but the bullets possibly. I really don't know.
This time he did kill a pimp, we think.
Yes.
Rather
Well, the
than
gun
last-
did. The question is, did he hold the gun at the time? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
It's hard to tell. He's arrested 3 days later when he's leaving his flat, and he's sentenced to 20 years in prison.
Okay. Well,
Because
that
at
was
that
the
point
end of the
there's murder in the
podcast,
story.
folks. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, not quite.
All right. Okay.
On the 6th of June, he's also tried for a small affair of false checks.
That's a bit small potatoes. I mean, if he's killed a
Yeah,
cop,
but, well,
injured a cop, killed a pimp.
it's another case, so they try him for that. During the trial, 2 accomplices hide a gun in the toilets. In fact, 2, I think. He retrieves them as he goes for a pee.
All right. Okay. This is now turning into The Godfather again.
Yeah, and he escapes the tribunal using the judge as a hostage.
Holy shit! I'd forgotten about that. That's mental.
Just escaped from prison, of course, at that point.
Yes.
What does he do? He robs a small company to get the payroll money. He's very busy.
Yeah.
He then takes 2 months holiday in Trouville on the coast.
Well, a robber's got to rest.
Well, Trouville has a casino, so he's interested. He likes gambling.
Well, I mean, he's not actually gambling with his own money, so
Yeah, exactly.
who
Yeah.
worries? He could just rob it afterwards and steal his own money back.
Yes. After these 2 months, he goes back to Paris and resumes activities.
Oh, he's such an idiot. He really is. He always returns to Paris.
Well, yeah, because that's where things happen. So he robs a bank in early August. Then he stops again for 2 months. And then in September, he attacks 2 banks again and robs each of them twice in 2 days.
I mean,
Just why not?
It's just crazy.
If you find a sweet bank, you can might as well attack it several times. He is arrested by Commissioner Broussard at the time on the 28th of September 73, because at that point everybody knows him.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's
when you attack a bank or something, everybody says,
they all
that's
know.
Mesrine. We
Yeah.
know.
just
We know who he is.
you see him at the door, they're already getting the bags out, probably.
Pretty much, yeah. The arrest is very famous because once he was brought to the police station, he celebrated his arrest with the cops by giving them cigars and champagne. And he's quoted as saying, "Don't you think that's an arrest that have some style?"
Best arrest ever.
Yeah, exactly. So he's sent to prison again, and he becomes friends with a guy called Jean-Charles Villequet, with whom he shares a cell.
Mm-hmm.
Villequet has a plan to escape with the help of his girlfriend who's on the outside. He does escape, but he doesn't take Mesrine with him. But he keeps promising Mesrine that he's going to come back to free him.
Mm-hmm.
Mesrine starts to think that it's just blowing smoke up his ass.
All right.
Unfortunately for Mesrine, Villequet is caught again on the 1st of December 75.
Oh, crap.
So that doesn't work. At that point, Mesrine sends death threats to a journalist because he's not happy about an article that he wrote about him and Villequet. Surprisingly, the letter is posted by a prison official who he managed to convince to do so for him. The prison guard, I think it wasn't the main person running the prison, but like his right hand or something.
Okay.
So fairly high in the hierarchy of the prison.
Mm-hmm.
Explains it when he's arrested by saying that it was to warn the journalist that something is coming for him. That's how he justifies it. But no doubt Mesrine managed to manipulate him to do so.
Oh, yeah.
He's very good.
So it was kind of like the sub-warden.
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember what he was exactly. So at that point, he's found guilty of death threats and he's placed in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that might be a few years now before he finds the opportunity to escape again, he starts writing his book, his first autobiography.
Well, he has to have something to while away the hours.
Well, yeah. In that book, which is published in 1977, he says that he killed 39 people. Those who try to verify his statements say that they can't find actual murders that match his story. So 39 people is, according to him, in reality, he killed people, there's no doubt, but it's probably a much, much smaller number.
But you can just see his friends going, sure, Jacques, sure. Yeah, you totally killed that many people. Yeah.
The criminologists who have studied him say that he's a small-time killer who wants to be a big-time killer.
I see.
And that's really why he says he killed so many people when it's not true.
He's got visions of grandeur.
Yeah, of course. He was totally narcissistic.
Yeah.
On the 19th of May 1977, he's sentenced to 20 years in prison for murder, armed robbery, and the use of firearms.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's concurrent with his current sentence, but that would be a lot of years anyway.
Yeah.
There's a famous story about that, again. At his trial, at some point, he undoes the tie knot that he had on his tie.
Oh, right.
And takes out a tiny key, and he throws it at the journalists in the room, saying that's the key for his handcuffs. Of course, commotion and everything.
Yeah.
In reality, it was the key for the tiny padlock on his TV in his cell. But that's what Mesrine did.
It's all about the theatre, isn't it?
Yes. He is kept in a high security prison at that point because that's too many escapes.
I mean, really, at this point, he should be kept in a place like, this is going to mean nothing to Cedric, but like Magneto in the first X-Men film. Just essentially in a Perspex box, floating in the middle of nowhere. He can be seen 24 hours a day.
Or like Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's a very fine man, that Hannibal. The late Hannibal Lecter.
Yes. But that doesn't stop him from escaping anyway.
Mm-hmm.
One day during a visit by his lawyers, he takes out a gun from nobody knows where and takes his lawyers hostage and neutralizes his guards.
That's crazy. You can get a gun that easily.
It was somewhere in the room and nobody knows how it got there. So some say that it was help from guards or from some visitors at some point. Nobody knows. It just happened to somehow have access to a gun in that room. Yeah, so people say it might even be one of the lawyers. Who knows? Right. There was a gun there.
But anyway, he got a gun.
So he got out again. So he, at that point, takes guard uniforms.
I mean, he's got a revolving door in whatever prison he's in.
Even the high security ones.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it was in La Santé in Paris. So he escapes with another prisoner using a ladder left in the yard for renovation. And he, co-escapee, is killed immediately by a police patrol that just happens to be in the street.
Okay.
But he escapes.
It's lucky, unlucky.
Yeah. First thing he does when he comes out is rob a firearm shop.
Of course.
Well, you need money and guns.
And guns.
So, And then he goes to Deauville on the coast and robs the casino. That was in the film, I remember that. Unfortunately, at that point, he's so well known that he's instantly recognized, so the police turns up.
Of course.
There is some shootout and roads are blocked with the police and all that. He manages to take a local farmer hostage, and he escapes by hiding under the backseat of his DS.
And a DS now.
Yes, and he's back to Paris and back in business. So he robs a few places again.
Mm-hmm.
He gives interviews to journalists, because why not?
Yeah.
And he threatens anyone who would try to arrest him and demands that the justice minister disband the high security prisons because he considers them demeaning and wrong.
He doesn't consider what he's doing wrong.
No. It's the prisons that are wrong.
Yes, okay.
So in June 1978, he meets Sylvia. I mentioned her before a bit early.
Yeah.
Sylvia Jean-Jacques, who works in the bar as a hostess, with air quotes.
He seems to like ladies that work in the sex industry.
Yes. Yeah. They disappear together in Italy, Algeria, the UK, and then go back to France. They essentially go for a honeymoon, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
On the 10th of November 1978, Mesrine, with two accomplices that he had known since he was a kid, tries to assassinate the judge who sentenced him to 20 years in prison the previous year. That doesn't go well.
No.
Because first, the judge is not home when they turn up.
Oh, I hate that when you...
Yeah.
when the person you're murdering isn't in.
Exactly. So he takes the family hostage. The son manages to escape and call the police, so the police turns up. One of the accomplices is caught.
Mm-hmm.
The other escapes, and Mesrine disappears. Nobody knows where Mesrine is.
Right.
The only reason why we know Mesrine was there is because of the witnesses. Otherwise, there's no trace of him. Nobody knows where he is and how he got out.
I'll tell you, he's absolutely... You cannot fault him for robbing a bank. Excellent at it. Well, I'll tell you what he's shit at. Well, what he was shit at was kidnapping. Whenever he starts kidnapping, it seems to go wrong.
Yes, he was garbage at kidnapping. Yeah. So the cops start to keep an eye on the accomplice that escaped, because they know who he is. They don't arrest him. I think they took a year and a half to arrest him. Right. Because they hope that they're going to lead him to Mesrine.
Yeah.
And the operation is ruined by a journalist from a far-right newspaper, Minute. Pierre Desproges, who was a comic in the 70s and 80s, said that Minute makes your hands dirty because of the ink and also your brain dirty.
Oh, yes. I can imagine.
Who tracked him down, and apparently he used police records, which he shouldn't have access to, but he was the friend of one of the commissioners, so they think that that's how he got access to the information, and he publishes the address in his newspaper. So at that point, the cops are kind of pissed off, because... Well, the accomplice is never going to lead them to Mesrine now.
No, he's not, and he's not going to be that home. He's not going to be home anymore, is he? Surely he's going to be doing a runner.
Well, no, he doesn't, but he's probably more careful because the story reaches him, obviously.
Yeah.
So that doesn't stop him from abducting a billionaire at that point for ransom money. Mm-hmm. He does that in June 1979. Doesn't go as well as expected, as usual, because he's rubbish at kidnapping. And they're very quickly found out because the young son, had some suspicions that cops don't come to your house at that time when it's not like an urgent affair. They came dressed as cops, and they pretended that they needed to talk to the billionaire's father for some kind of affair that was going on.
Right.
And the son thought,
that's weird.
That's not an urgent thing. Why would they come so late in the evening? Yeah. So he wrote down the reg number of the car.
Handy.
So then they obviously try to kidnap the billionaire, and they do. And as the son recognized Mesrine, because everybody knew him at the time, the cops knew exactly who to look for. He still manages to get ransom money on the second try. That's a long story I'm not going to go into, because otherwise it's going to be a very, very long episode. But anyway, things go south as usual. There's a gun battle. They kill a couple of cops, I think. And he buys his BMW with ransom money.
I don't know why he bought a horrid shit brown one, but
At the time, it was the colours, it was the 70s.
Gross.
Everything was either brown or orange.
Gross. But yet, once again, kidnaps.
Oh yeah, kidnap goes
Things
wrong.
go sideways.
Every time. So he's absolutely garbage at kidnapping. So they release him after 5 weeks when they get the ransom money. But it took 2 attempts to get the money. And it's probably at that point that the authorities decide that they have enough of him. So they decide to do something.
I mean, he's just continually pantsing them.
It's just
exposing their arses
constantly.
every opportunity.
Yeah. So they create an anti-Mesrine unit in August 79.
I mean, you're pissing the police off when you have a whole unit
just for you. Yes. So as the unit is formed, Mesrine wants revenge on that journalist, the one that tracked down his accomplice.
Yes. And
it happens to be the guy who he originally didn't like because he said he slandered him in his articles.
Oh, yes.
So that journalist is in trouble. So they set a trap to abduct him, and it works. So they take him underground in a mushroom farm north of Paris. There's lots of mushroom farms in Paris. And they torture him. At some point, he shoot him in the cheek. And when he talks to the press afterward, because of course he will talk to the press, he says that it was to stop him talking bullshit. Then they shoot him in the arm. And
is that to stop him from writing, is it?
Yep, stop him from writing bullshit. And then they shoot him in the leg. And he said that was just for pleasure.
I was ready to say, what? So he can't watch his job?
Yes, no, it was just for pleasure, that one. Okay. So they torture him a bit more and they leave him for dead. But he survives, just. Right. At the end of October 79, the anti-Mesrine unit discover Mesrine's secret flat in the 18th district of Paris. It's possible because the journalist who survived gave him one of his informants who gave the cops the name of somebody who had contact with Mesrine.
Okay.
Called Charlie Bauer. And the cops put him on wiretap, and from their conversations they deduced where he was hiding. But they couldn't attack him in his flat because it was overlooking both the Périphérique and the main boulevard in Paris.
Oof.
And they thought that if they try to get in the flat when he's in it, what he's going to do is start shooting at cars going past, and that would be dead people. So they can't do anything. So they decide to somehow wait until he's out of his flat. Now we're back to where we started.
At the beginning of the story, yes.
At some point, they set up a huge operation where they have a guy, one cop who pretends to be a homeless guy in his street for days and days and days, sleeping on cardboard day and night.
That's dedication.
They cover all the escape routes. So they have cars everywhere. I heard 50 cars possibly in the area. So they have cars everywhere. And they wait until he comes out. And he does. When he does, they follow him. So there's a whole bunch of cars that follow him that were parked in his street. And at some point, they have a lorry who manages to get in front of him, cops inside, they open the tarp and shoot him. He was apparently shot with 18 high-velocity bullets.
Wow.
Sylvia, who was in the car with him, is shot in the arm and she loses an eye and her poodle is killed.
Oh no!
That's terrible, yes.
That's so savage.
When the police searches the car, they discover guns and grenades under Sylvia's seat.
Wow.
Then starts the controversy, and that's the bit I remember the most about all that. Because soon after he was shot, nobody knew exactly who had shot him. The police was there, no doubt.
Yeah.
Because when he was shot, he was surrounded by police cars. He didn't know. One of the commissioners said that he saw him before he was shot.
Right.
So he saw the commissioner and recognized him. But it's not clear if it's really true or not. But there were police cars everywhere. So the cops knew who it was. But nobody else actually knew who shot Mesrine.
But did they think it was a cop?
It was the authorities somehow, but they didn't know what service, who was involved, how it was authorized. Nobody knew anything.
Oh, you think there was a black ops within the unit?
Well, we don't know, because at that point there were two groups that were essentially fighting with each other. about Mesrine. One was the OCRB, which is the Anti-Gangster Brigade, that was owned by the police, and the BRI, which is the Search and Intervention Brigade, which was owned by the gendarmerie.
Right. So the army and the cops are fighting.
The army and the cops were fighting for him. Both claim having tracked and killed him on that day, but both can't have done it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem incredibly constitutional just to...
Yeah, well, that's the problem, because if it was the BRI who shot Mesrine,
right,
then they would have had to warn him first, because it's the army and they have to warn you before they shoot you. None of the witnesses at the time
heard anybody shouting.
Heard anything,
right.
But at the same time, nobody investigated.
Well, no.
So it's the people interviewed by the journalists at the time in the street that says, oh, it's just suddenly there were shots. There was we didn't hear anything except the shots.
Yeah.
If it was the police who shot him, then they've always claimed self-defense. And the police can do that, in which case they don't have to warn you before shooting you if they consider they're in danger.
But he was driving.
He was driving, but they say he had guns in his car.
But he was driving.
He
had two hands on the wheel, surely.
Well, no, probably not. He probably had one. But even then, the guns were...
If they weren't...
Depending on who you listen to, either at his feet, which makes it dangerous to drive.
Yes.
Or at Sylvia's feet, which is more likely. But then when he was killed, he was still in his seat with his seatbelt on.
Yes.
And therefore, there's no way he could reach the floor on the passenger side.
No.
So that doesn't make sense. He couldn't have threatened them or made them feel like it was self-defense just sitting in the car.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work very well.
No.
But at the same time, when the commissioner gave interviews, he said that he saw him reach for a gun.
Bullshit.
But at the same time, they don't seem to have been aware of the guns before they searched the car. So
no.
The timeline doesn't work.
No. To me, it just sounds like one of them fancies themselves as Dirty Harry, and once he fires, that sets off everyone else.
Yeah, possibly.
Because
but
they're going to be completely on like coiled springs.
Because it was a huge operation that it took a long time to plan. Yes.
And I just think it was that one bullet, that one firing of a gun started the cascade. And Mesrine died, and they're not really going to cry over, are they?
Oh, no, they were happy.
Even though, I mean, it's completely unethical and unconstitutional. I mean, they should all be put in prison.
Yeah. There's press photos of the cops posing next to the car and stuff. His body's still on his seat. Yeah. Because, they were happy. They had been trying to catch him for a long time.
And they did exactly the same with Pablo Escobar as well. They have
when they got him, was it on the roof they got him?
Yeah, they got him on the roof, yeah.
So nobody knows really who shot him. No. Is it the BRI or is it the OCRB? Nobody knows.
It's definitely someone in law enforcement.
Definitively.
Yeah.
And the guy in charge of the whole operation, which was a cop, had said, that's it. Now we need to do something. Champagne is over. But that was it. That wasn't technically shoot him. So that's the way it was for 30 years. In 2008, journalists tracked down some of the people who were around at the time. There was, for example, a music student in a phone box next to the shooting. There was a restaurant owner just on the other side of the road, and they both said that they heard the shooting. They heard shouting after the shooting. They heard, for example, somebody say, "Don't move, you're done," after they had shot, but never heard anything before they shot. So definitively, it's fairly clear that nobody warned him before shooting him, but that still doesn't clarify who shot him. Was it the army or was it the police?
Yeah.
Either way, there's no way he could have been a threat sitting in his chair. No. But still, nobody knows what really happened. Yeah,
from a driving seat.
Yeah.
With a seatbelt on.
Yes. Yeah, it was still on when he was dead in the photos, so clearly he didn't have time to do anything.
It's good to... It's even a guy that bad, road safety was always at the top of his mind.
Especially in 79. It's... It's early adoption of seatbelts.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was an inquiry open in 2000, which ended up in non-lieu, i.e. there's not enough proof either way.
No.
In 2004, the appeal court confirmed in 2005, and that's it now. And there's nothing else that can be done. That was brought up by one of his daughters.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just lip service. I mean, I'm sure they just want to leave it in the past.
Oh yeah, well, definitively yes.
Because I mean, nobody was covered in glory. The guy was just a complete lawless prick, and he was a murderer. But
yes,
you don't fight fire with fire in terms of
So nobody really knows his motivation for being a gangster, and it's clear that it started very early. But he came from a well-off family. His parents had lace factories, for example, so they had money. They had sent him to private schools and everything, the best schools in the area. They wanted him to go to one of the most prestigious business schools in France, HEC.
Yeah.
But he just didn't like school.
Sometimes psychopaths don't want to be CEOs. They just want to be robbing murderers.
The film makes a big thing of the time he spent in Algeria.
Yeah,
and that's something that comes from his family.
Yeah.
Because he was a conscript for his military service for 3 years at a time in Algeria. And he
had quite a rough time down there, didn't he?
Yeah, apparently, according to his family, he was sent for wood chores. And wood chores meant execution of civilians outside the military compound. So essentially, you have prisoners which are civilians. You take them out and shoot them outside.
No wonder the Algerians hate the French.
Yes, but that's been denied by all the people that had been interviewed who were in the same unit. They said, no, we never did that, and it's certainly not him anyway.
Right.
So that comes from his family. Nobody knows if it was true at all.
That's something, if you're outside Europe or you're outside the French-speaking world, I cannot emphasise how much the Algerians do not like the French.
Yes, yeah, definitively. And the film implies that that's what messed him up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he had already done burglaries when he was 18, because after he dropped out of school, he was working as a door-to-door salesman.
Right.
And the friend of his he worked with said that sometimes he would go back to the houses where they had been as door-to-door salesmen and just rob them. Yeah. So, and that was 18. That was before he went to the army.
Just sounds like sport.
Yeah, well, he just wanted money and just decided I'm going to rob people, and that's it. So clearly he was already on the wrong side of the law before he went to the army. So who knows? Because when he came back for the army, he didn't start killing people. He started doing robberies as he was doing before. He started killing people a long time later, several years later. So who knows exactly what happened? It could just be the normal escalation that if you want to survive in that world, you have to be worse and worse and worse, and eventually just kill people for no reason.
Well, it does tend to escalate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nobody really knows why he was the way he was. But anyway, that's the story of Mesrine. Very short story, because that could be a very, very long episode. I
have to say, we've been talking about the two films. The two films are called Mesrine, and it's Vincent Cassel is playing Mesrine. Yes. These are such great films. And didn't really do... If it had been an American gangster, the entire planet would know about him, but because it's a French person and because the films were in French, I just don't think he's that well known outside of France. And it was the one that I specifically asked Cedric to do for number 100. So there you go. And are you going to tell him, or am I, what's happening after episode 100? Okay, it was going to be me then, is it? Yes. Because things happen the way they do and life gets in the way, we're going to be furloughing the podcast for a little while. Cedric is suffering from a bit of burnout. Been doing the podcast for quite a while now. And it's a lot of work for Cedric, and Cedric has quite an important job, so... It would be good if he had some downtime as well as, his job and podcasting and all the other things that he does. So, Crime Most French is going to be leaving you for a little while. I'm sure we'll be coming back at some point because we both really enjoy doing it. But Cedric and I are not going to be disappearing. If you're at all interested, it's going to be my turn at the reins, and we're still going to be looking at crime, but we're moving locations. It only seems fair that I take a good hard look at my place of birth, and we're going to be launching Crime Most Scotland, or
Crime Most Scots.
Crime Most Scots. I can't even get the name of the podcast right. Yes, Crime Most Scots. And if you hold on a wee minute, we'll put a wee bit of a preview in for you, and then hopefully next week it should be out, and we can put it in the feed for you. And we'd be more than delighted if you come across and listen to my wee stories and listen to Cedric butting in every now and again. Take care, everybody.